Thank you for taking part in today's webinar. I am Heather Mason, president of the NBDA. Thanks for being here. The question heard most often is, how do we retain these new customers, these new bicycle enthusiasts? The intent of this webinar today is to leave you with a deeper understanding of the path from prospect to customer and how data plays a critical role along the way. We will talk about data capture and what information is key, and when you have this information, what to do with it once you have it. We intend for you to take part and to leave here with a better understanding of buyer intent and how to maximize both your point of sale system and your eComm solution to communicate most effectively. I'm joined here by NBDA Development Director, Rochelle Scouten.
Hi, so as we go on today, we'd love this to be a fluid back and forth. So if you have any questions at any point, we will try to, pull the relevant ones as we're talking about that in conversation, but also we'll have time at the end for any questions that are submitted. You can use the Q&A function or the chat and we'll pull from both of those. So thanks for being here.
Thanks, Rochelle. So such an important conversation we're about to dive into, and we have some fantastic guests to help us along the way. I'd like to start by introducing Scott Buelter. He is CEO and founder of Ascent 360.
Heather, thanks so much for having me. Again, my name is Scott Buelter, CEO of Ascent 360. Ascent is engaged with a good number of bike retailers and bike e-commerce companies across the country and into Canada. So we've got some experience kind of thinking about how to communicate with customers, which hope to discuss today.
Thanks, Scott. I'm just getting to know more about Ascent 360. I am just at awe of all the capabilities that bicycle retailers can find with your platform. So really, thank you for being here.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and so we also have Lightspeed product manager and co-founder of Rebicycle, Alex Therrien, on the call. Alex, thanks for being here.
Thanks, Heather. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here and to take part in this talk, both as a bicycle retailer as well as a provider of digital retail solutions. So thanks again for having me.
Yeah, so we also are joined by a bicycle retailer. So Belmont Wheelworks, we have the eComm manager for Belmont Wheelworks located in Massachusetts. Tom Cohen is on the panel today. Tom, thanks for being here.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
So, gosh, this past 15 months, if we just take a moment and we pause and we think about it, the industry experienced a fantastic bicycle boom. And once bicycle retailer stores were deemed essential, bicycle sales skyrocketed. New customers have entered into our sport and industry, and they're engaging with retailers nationwide in unprecedented numbers. The expectation of these customers is greater than ever before. We want to keep them engaged. We want to keep them active. We want to help transform them into cyclists. So with so many options, the need for personalized shopping experience is greater than ever. This is something we've been talking a lot about, a personalized shopping experience. Many retailers are crippling with this topic and maybe not being able to pinpoint the most effective way to communicate with customers and to develop more than just another experience, but an unforgettable one at your bicycle retail store. So today's conversation is all about that and how we can invest in technology and data capture. And the phrases that we hear in these conversations, how can we do that? That is what we're talking about. How can we do that? So today's conversation is deeper than something saying we need to do this. It's how we can do it, why we should do it, and why to get started today. And that's why we've brought Tom, an authentic retailer from Belmont Wheelworks, to the conversation. They have just gotten started in this new field, and we want Tom to just share with us what he's learning and how we can learn from Belmont Wheelworks to turn and implement and put this into your bicycle retail location. Tom, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So what's it like starting using technology in the store to interact with customers on a new personal level?
Yeah, so in a lot of ways, it's been a very natural transition for us. It's something that we, of course, like many people, would send out emails to our customers, but we send the same email to everybody on our list, no matter what they've done with our store, no matter when they last came in the store or what bike they bought. They just get the same email of, hey, you should consider buying this, or we're hosting this event, or whatever it may be, whatever we had for the month. And we always knew we wanted to have a more tailored experience, but we didn't really have the tools to do it. So for us, moving to Ascent 360 has been natural in the sense that it allows us, it gives us the tool to create those emails and easily send them off. And I think that's the point that I really want to stress is it's been easy to do. You know, of course, you have to build the emails, but it's been very natural in that way to say, hey, we want to send this email to these people because they will find this relevant based on what they've done or how they've interacted with us. And then we can do it.
Yeah, I totally get that. When we're thinking about starting something new, we think about all the reasons why this is going to be a headache and another thing to add to the table. And maybe we don't have someone to do it, but it really is not that hard once you get started. So Tom, thanks. That's a fantastic feedback. I guess what we'll do is just start by asking a question to each member on the panel. And, you know, in your words, I guess, in your experience as well, how important is it for retailers to focus on data collection? And what are some gains that could come from it? I think, Scott, I would just start with you.
Yeah, so I think there's a couple ways to think about it. And, you know, way one is, hey, look, people are coming into the store. You know, we've probably got a bigger inventory problem than we have a customer problem. But, you know, that certainly will change as, you know, this season rolls on. And, you know, to my view, any retailer who is collecting data and is starting to understand, you know, who their customer is and can then communicate with them as that customer kind of goes through their journey is going to be a whole lot better off, right? You know, I would you know, probably ask if you would consider, you know, that there's another bike dealer possibly for sale that has 100,000 customer records. You know, how valuable would that be to you? And I think it really is fundamental to say, you know, it's a secure long-term future to know who these folks are and be able to interact with them in some way that is valuable to them.
Yeah, I love that. You know, the question, I would definitely say it's valuable. Alex, I see you nodding in agreement. I feel like you're thinking this is a really important conversation.
Yeah, and I want to add on to what Scott just mentioned, but also kind of come back to you know, you briefly said, you know, you got to get started, and getting started is important. You don't need to know today what you're going to do. I mean, it's always important to have a plan, have a strategy, you know, an end goal. But we know that customer records and collecting customer data is a resource in and of itself. And we have to treat it like that and start collecting it as soon as possible, even if we don't know exactly how we're going to act on it. Because like Scott said, when you get at a later time, as you know, move on in business, the more you collect them, the more they begin to be valuable. And then you can, like, you know, Tom is discovering now, start to actually reach out to the right people. But if you don't have that you don't treat it like a resource, it's not going to be as valuable as we're going to make it out to be today. So you don't need to know exactly what you're going to do, but make sure that you're starting to collect it now and you're putting it in a digital system so that at a later date, when you're ready to do this, now is the time. But if you're not ready right now, you're ready to do it, you'll have what you need to get started.
This is such a big term, such a big conversation. You know, what information are we actually looking for? You know, Scott, I would turn to you too. You know, what do we need to collect from the customer? Yeah,
so I think at its most fundamental, I think it's really important to collect some amount of PII. You know, we actually did work with a bike dealer, and we looked at 30 days of transactions, and we actually found that about half of them, we didn't know who the consumer was. And in some of those cases, there were individuals who had spent, you know, $15,000, $20,000 in a month. And, you know, those are relatively big bike purchases. And, you know, not knowing who those people are makes it impossible to communicate with them in any way, right? You can't say thank you. You can't send flowers to their house or whatever you might think about. You can't even just suggest, hey, come back for a tune-up. Let us make sure that, you know, your bike is working correctly. So, you know, at its most fundamental, some PII, I'd probably start with the email address or phone number. And then you start saying, well, the other data that you want to have is some demographic data, right? Some interest data, some behavioral data, like what did they buy, right? If you know that they bought a mountain bike, you know a whole lot as compared to if they bought a commuter bike. That sort of thing. And, you know, there's a lot of data that just comes with all of that, right? That kind of comes automatically, you know, things like geographics or, you know, some amount of demographics, including gender. But the you know, the most important place to start is just to try to, you know, understand who the consumer actually is.
such valuable information to have. I remember at my retail store, trying, like you're saying, trying to remember who bought which helmet, to follow up with them, when it was time for another helmet in a couple of years or whatever. We didn't do that at the time. I'm thinking back to just a email list, a sign up for our email list that was on the side of the register. It was a piece of paper, usually turned into the paper that we made sure the pens were working when they signed with their credit card, But how are we collecting data these days? Alex, can you help us out here?
I'm sure some people still have the email list on the side of the counter. I remember myself having that as well, and not being able to read half of them. So that's we can already highlight one issue with that. If you have a digital system to record sales and you're collecting one piece of identifying information, the email address or the phone number, then you have at least the bare minimum to start doing some demographic data, at least based on what they purchase. And I mean, that's what a system like Lightspeed is going to help you do. You still need to act on it, but you can start to segment slowly, and we don't need to talk about, strategies on how to collect more data. It's at the very least, a system like Ascent 360 can get started with just recording, well, who bought the helmet, who bought the mountain bike, and which groups bought hybrid bikes. So that to me is the minimum that you need to be started. And, systems like Lightspeed will help you collect that data pretty easily.
Yeah, and as I'm reading articles about offering a very personalized experience, I've heard that it's nice to let the customer know why you're asking for this information. Scott, any other tips about efficient ways to collect this information as far as getting customers to give it to you?
Yeah, I think this is one of the most kind of critical. There's a whole field of thought to have here, and as we talk with retailers, the question is often, hey, look, our shop floor guys or the people on the floor, they really don't like asking these questions. And I would suggest that there's kind of a frame of reference change that should happen, right? One of it is, well, you just got to talk about the importance of it, right? Amazon collects 100% of their customer data, and they know a whole lot about the consumer, and they use that data in really, really smart ways. I think the idea of, what are you trying to do? You're trying to build a relationship with the consumer, provide them some amount of value, something that is important to them, right? It's not just about, hey, we're gonna market to you. So, if you were to offer 2 questions to your team and say, hey, when someone comes in, say, do you want to be on our email marketing list? The answer may not be yes, but if you'd say something rather like, look, our team can send information to you about, what's going on in the store, rides that we're leading, information on bike recalls or new technology that's being released. Would you like to be part of this? The answer is probably, yes. And it also just, requires that you actually do provide, some amount of value as you build the relationship. At the end of the day, the consumer probably actually wants to be part of your family, right? They're getting into cycling, or they're already in cycling, and they want to, have a partner in that journey, and not just their friends, someone who really knows what they're doing, and ostensibly, that's you. You're the expert.
Oh my God, I can't stop smiling right now, because I remember being like, selling someone a bicycle, getting someone set up and not letting them leave the store until I could get their email address, because I was like, you want to come ride with us? You want to come back? And those customers became like part of our family, our best customers. Yeah. And I'm just thinking, I have this flavor of scratch drink that I love, and the local shop knows that I love it. And it just came back in stock, and they actually sent me an email, and I, of course, am going down to get it. So perfect information to share. Tom, I'm just wondering though, as a new shop, Wheelworks is just getting started capturing data like this and using it. Think about staff training and how Wheelworks is really, making sure that all the staff there is collecting this customer information. Was there anything that you guys did to get the staff on board?
So the biggest thing we've done is really just educating the staff on why it's important. So explain to them that a lot of staff have the idea that they don't want to ask the customer, right, for their email address, just so that we can then send them a bunch of marketing info, especially if they have a good relationship with that customer, where they feel, well, they're going to come back, they're going to buy stuff. We don't need to promote that to them. So doing more training on explaining to people that, it's not just for marketing, it's also for customer service. So for, warranty information, right? Like all sorts of companies have different ideas of what they're doing with their warranty. So by having that email address, having that customer info, we can better help them in that regard, right? And then explaining too how it plays into, everything the business is doing, right? One thing I noticed when we look at our data is we have much higher capture rates for the full address than we do for the email. So clearly staff understand in the past, right, the company would send out physical mailing. So part of it too is retrain them to say, hey, in the past, that full address was important, but now it's still important to have that. We of course want the zip code information, but we also need to make sure that email goes in there. So also retrain them to get them to understand this is now much more important than it ever has been. So we found some success with that. And also I found just being transparent with staff about those metrics. So saying to them, hey, in the past 3 months, we've had an email capture rate of 50%, and we've had an address capture rate of 65%. So that they understand, oh, there's a bridge there, right? So that's kind of the approach we've taken, and say, we're looking to bring that up to 80%. So that's a few things we've taken, just talking to my fellow coworkers, just being super transparent. And then I think the other thing there's also the customer side of it, right? So one thing that we just started doing was we actually are going to we have signs at every register that tells customers, hey, if you come and shop with us and buy anything, so any transaction, right, you provide your email address or you provide your customer account, because some customers, right, we have all their info, but they come to buy something small like a multi-tool or a helmet, and they think, oh, the employee doesn't ask for it, and I don't really care if they have that information. So to incentivize all those people to give us their information, we're essentially saying we're going to hold a monthly raffle and raffle off a $25 gift card. It's a small thing to do, and we'll see if that also helps to get customers to see, oh, there's a benefit to me, more than just the marketing. There's like an actual potential financial benefit, and we're going to do that every single month. So those are some things we're trying out, and we'll see how they go.
That's exciting. Those are great ideas to implement this. And Scott, have you seen any other things that retailers have done that really stood out to you to collect more information from consumers, to encourage consumers to give it to you?
Yeah, I think there's a couple. One is just to measure, right? To say, well, we know that 85% of purchases over $35, we have contact information on. And 100% on, over $2,000 or something like that, right? There's real business reasons if someone spends $2,000 that you want to be able to communicate with them for their benefit as well, right? That, they can call you and say, hey, look, my frame has a crack in it, and you actually know that they bought it if they lost their receipt or whatever. So I think measuring is just a great start, right? To know what you've actually got. But we also have seen a lot of dealers have some sort of internal spiff. And that is, if the individuals at the stores who are collecting data achieve some metric, then they're paying them out in some way. And I've seen that be time off. I've seen it be cash, all those sorts of things.
Yeah, let's get everyone excited to go ahead and connect with, these are just conversations that are happening. You're really connecting with the person in front of you who, wants to become a cyclist, wants to be more engaged with your store. This is a great opportunity to have a little bit deeper connection and firm up those connections on an authentic level. So Tom, I guess I'd throw it back over to you now that Belmont Wheelworks is collecting all this information. Any unique stories that have come out of it? Anything, I know it has only been a short period of time, but anything you could share with us?
So I'll share two stories. One's directly with a customer. So we have post-purchase emails that go out for when a customer buys a bike. And the other day, we got a response to our post-purchase email that is about, did you use your free tune-up with the bike? And the customer responded saying, I did use my free tune-up, but the bike is still having some issues, right? So that was a good example of, okay, I don't know if they would have gotten in touch with us, but it didn't seem like maybe they would have if they hadn't gotten that email. And then of course we tell them, yeah, of course, come back. We want to check out that bike. And I did follow up with that specifically for this webinar and say that, yeah, essentially the customer came in and the bike was fixed and it was all fine. It was obviously, it was a simple derailleur adjustment. So that was a good example how I just feel like that customer they felt we were reaching out to them in enough of a personalized way that they responded to that email, which I felt good about because it was a simple thing. And Yeah, I think that's always good, right? The other thing that's a little more on the internal side, operations, is just the other day, Specialized has announced a change to their warranty policy, right? Now the customers have to register their bike or frame or wheel with Specialized to receive that lifetime warranty. And so I spoke with my boss, right, the owner, and he said, what can we do to let people know? And of course, the greatest part was I immediately knew this is actually going to be easy. Luckily, with anything with higher purchases, right, bikes, frames, or wheel sets, we have almost 100% collection rate. So with name, address, email. So that part's already taken care of. But now we will just be able to use a Send 360 and send an automated email to anyone who's purchased a Specialized bike, frame, wheel set, 14 days after purchase, to say, hey, you have X amount of days to register your your product with Specialized and get a lifetime warranty. And so that was a good example how a Send 360 actually is going to just help us solve an operational issue, which ultimately is a customer service challenge. So that was pretty exciting.
I love that. Tom's like, I know exactly what to do, and it's going to be easy.
It's going to, yeah, exactly.
I love those stories. We did have a question that popped up from Stephanie. She wants to ask, what is the industry standard for email capture rate? Alex or Scott, do you know this? Would you be able to answer that question?
I'll tell you that we certainly know what's happening, and I don't think there is an industry standard. We see customers who start with us are collecting as little as 5 to 15%. What I would probably say is best in class is something like 85 or 90% for purchases that are over some dollar value, and we typically see that set at either 35 or 50, something like that. And I think that's world class. Like no matter what, some people are going to say, look, I don't want to be in your database one way or the other. I really don't want to share my information with you, and that's okay. It's totally respect that. But 90% of people actually do want to be part of your family in some way. And I would almost tell a story about this. Is actually a bike brand. I was reading through some of their product registration cards, and someone from Israel, the one I opened was from Israel, and the person had filled out all their information. There's an area they can write some things, and they wrote like literally, "This is the most amazing bike. I'm so jazzed. What are you going to be doing this event?" And all that sort of stuff. Wrote their name, and I asked like, "Well, what are you actually doing with that?" And they're like, "Well, nothing actually. Just it sits there in the box." And I thought that was really sad, because what you actually see on the other side of that is that customer like wants to be part of it, right? I mean, if you're selling, I don't know, stools or something like that, I totally get that the consumer may not want to be part of it, but this is an industry where people are really, really excited to be part of it. So I guess I would suggest, to make the answer simple, I would suggest something like 85 or 90% at 35 or more.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Scott. Thank you. And if you have questions along the way, if you're listening, just type them in that Q&A and we'll pull them in as we can. I guess I would like to transition now. So I'm thinking, right, we're focused, we're collecting this data, we've got our employees engaging to do this. What are we doing with it once we have it? Alex, I'll just start with you.
Yeah, thanks. And while I answer that question, I also want to kind of point something out that probably will answer this question. If you notice Tom's anecdotes about, interacting with customers and using this information to better, to better the business, it wasn't I sent an email and made a lot of money. It was I had a communication, I had a conversation, and specifically I had someone who had a problem, who came in the shop. And I mean, Tom, I'm sure now you've made a customer for life, or at least as close as possible to having a long-term customer. And what we call that, like within our industry, at least, is detractor to ambassador, is that in that moment, this customer needed help. He had already purchased your product. You had already made, the money you needed to make, but that's not the real value. The real value is that they were able to get back in touch with Tom and his team, get the service that they needed, which was, just a derailleur adjustment. I mean, we've all been through that, just a quick adjustment, you're on your way, and you make this person's day. And those are the people that, even at a digital company like Lightspeed, some of our most fervent ambassadors of our brand are not people that purchased our product and went, this is amazing, and then go and shout it on rooftops. It's people that had an issue, our version of a derailleur adjustment, got in touch with us and got a response, and we're able to have this conversation. And in our industry, we capture personal information in a different way, but we still have these records, and we're able to reach out, and we make ourselves available as well. So to have that two-way interaction is truly the value in doing this. It's not just sending out emails to make money. It really is that. And if you think of it on those terms, you start seeing the value, the lifetime value of a customer, not the value of their last purchase, which is likely a far more important metric for you to start measuring. And with that in mind, you're just going to open yourself up as well to be as available as possible to your customers.
Alex, I'm like, my brain is spinning over here. I'm definitely a culprit, or can be accused of getting someone's email address and then like, okay, I'm sending them everything, which isn't the best tactic, right? It's like timing, making sure you've got the right content coming across. Scott, we're collecting this data. What are we doing with it now?
Yeah, so I think the way to consider it is maybe through some analogies, and one of those is, and this is outside of bike, and I think it's helpful to think about some things outside of bike because it offers some perspective. We worked with a ski resort, and that ski resort was actually having some trouble selling season passes. And as we talked through their marketing strategy, they were effectively sending emails to their customers that were really about things that they liked, right? And this is the guys on the marketing team, which was more or less people hucking themselves off a cliff or doing a backflip over rocks or something like that. And I think what you have to imagine is that almost everybody who gets that email, and I'm going to call it 80%, can be turned off by that type of email, right? There's some people who absolutely love it, but a lot of people might look at that and say, this might not be the mountain for me. I really want to ski kind of blue groomers, or I want to get my kids into a ski school, or I want somewhere that our family can go and granddad can sit at the base and we can see him every so often. All those sort of things. And I think that the bike industry tends to do something somewhat similar. And that is, often sending, these kind of hero images of someone suffering on a bike, with blood trickling down a finger or something like that. And they're doing everything they can to just survive. And that's not the reason that, many of these new consumers have come into the industry, right? They've come in because they want to be outdoors. They want to do something healthy. They want to get fit. They want to, make it to a friend's house without having to get in an Uber or whatever that is. And so, where that really goes to is you've got the data that you need, right? That they bought a commuter bike, so send them something like that. Or, you probably know the gender of almost everyone you've got, and use that to send women information or images that are interesting to women. Rather than just sending everybody, the photo of, the most expensive bike that you've got to everybody, right? Fit it to what they are. And, there's a lot of strategies for doing that, but I think that's it in summary.
Yeah, I'm thinking, we talk a lot about hosting women's clinics or special events for women, and retailers are always asking, well, how do we get women there? And, you just have to start collecting the information and you'll have it. But interesting, Scott, you brought up like using their purchase history. So like if they bought a hybrid bike, you can follow up with that group. I'm wondering, Tom, at Belmont Wheelworks, are you starting to use purchase history in your marketing? Are you actually doing this now? Anything you can talk about that?
Yes. So we are actively doing this. And that's where we started with the Send 360. So all of our emails are triggered from a purchase that the customer makes. So to give you a sense of how this goes, right? So if we take just a basic hybrid purchase, we filtered for hybrids, and then they have to be under $1,700, right? And so the way that it works is and this is also too, to go back to what Alex was also saying about the customer service. These emails are more customer service oriented than they are trying to sell people stuff. Like the first email thanks them for their purchase, just in case no one thanked them for that when they went out the door. And then also gives them tips for how to maintain your bike. So let them know, hey, you should lubricate your chain, you should pump your tires. And we link to a web page on our website that goes over that basic information. And really just very basic, doesn't even really sell them anything, right? And then the second email, the title is, how was your first ride? So that's where you get into more of a sales type thing where you say, how was your first ride? Did you feel like you needed a basket? Were you trying to find a place to put that sandwich? Or whatever it was, that extra layer. And then the third email is, we don't sell them anything. We actually tell them to bring their bike in for the free tune-up. We're just like, hey, just so you know, you have 30 days left for your tune-up. Make sure you bring it in. And then there are a few more. There's one more after that, which is a year out. We'll at some point probably expand on that. We do have a year out email that no one's gotten yet, but it's basically happy 1 year bike birthday. And just kind of says, hope you're enjoying your bike. Now you should probably bring it in for a tune-up, and this is how much we charge for a tune-up. So that's a little more salesy. But really in our future plans, now that we're opening our fitting department back up, we're going to add an email all about fittings, because at our shop, fittings are huge. So we want to sell a fitting with most bikes, not, every single bike, but we'll do fittings on hybrids, for example. So we want to have an email that goes out to tell people, hey, you haven't gotten a fitting, so we can, set that up so it knows, okay, it's been 6 months, this person never got a fitting. We'll send them an email about it, just to make sure that we know that people, when they have their bikes fit, they're more comfortable and they're going to be happier riding them. And ultimately, if a customer's riding their bike more, they're going to spend more money. You don't even have to sell them stuff. They'll wear things out. They'll need more stuff. They'll need a jacket. So that's really what we're focusing on, is we're not sending out emails that say, hey, buy this power meter because you bought a hybrid. We're saying like, hey, these are things we want to consider to make your ride pleasant. So that's really what we're focusing on. I think what we're going to continue to focus on for a while until we get every little avenue sorted out.
Seems like a really good plan. Tom, can I ask you, have you had any customer feedback from the emails that have gone out recently?
Not really. Yeah, we haven't had a customer contact us and say, hey, this was a great email. I think we can see some feedback in the fact that people occasionally respond to them. Of course, we can see some metrics of what people are doing with it. We can see that people get an email, they're coming back in, they're interacting with us. We haven't gotten anyone who said, hey, you guys are doing a great job, but certainly
it's coming.
Yeah, maybe someone will, but you can see it, right? You can see it in the data. You can see how people are interacting with us. So yeah.
All right. We did have another question from Mike Peabody that came up, and it's a fantastic question. And he describes how he does send out emails and he gets people who hit the unsubscribe button. I hate when that happens. It makes me, I get sad. I'm like, oh no, what did I do? It hurts your soul, like Mike types here. And so he wanted to ask us, what content might work best. And then a second part of it was, how often, should we be sending emails out? Scott, would you like to start on this one?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll maybe answer that a little bit in backwards order. In terms of frequency, right? The two big sins of email marketing specifically, are sending too frequently and not sending enough, right? So if you only send something once every 4 months, people are like, what in the world is this? And I don't even remember who they are, and it confuses them, right? So staying engaged is a good thing, and it really works. And then sending too often is also really, really rough, right? We all know there's big retailers out there who send 4 times, 5 times, 6 times a week, and it's absolutely just deflating. What the right number is probably based on what sort of content you actually have to share. If in fact you've got a weekly ride and you want to publish that to people, then I would certainly suggest sending that on a weekly basis, which could be on top of some other email that goes out. Now, I would also only do that for individuals who are interested in getting your weekly ride. We've got many ski resorts. We work with many ski resorts who send daily snow reports. People who get that, I mean, they read it 100% of the time because they actually want to know if it's snowing. Now, in terms of the content and unsubscribes, right? So some unsubscribes are going to be natural, and it's they've moved away, right? They don't live, as an example, anywhere near Massachusetts anymore. They're now in Austin. They've got a new bike dealer, and they're not, and you can't keep them, and that's okay. But certainly, the batch and blast mentality is going to have much higher unsubscribe rates one way or the other. And maybe the best way to look at it is through open rates, right? So what we know about just batch and blast is that 10, 12 years ago, you could get 25, 30% of subscribers to open those emails. Email volume has increased so much that what we see in retail on average for batch and blast is probably 12, 13% open rates. And I think it's going to keep going down. If you actually think about event-driven, behavioral-based emails, right? You bought something or you're registered for the event and you're sending, hey, the event is in 4 days. Those have, 60% open rates, and people really do want those. So I know I'm kind of mixing a lot into it. What I would say is the most valuable content is related to that consumer specifically. So as an example, they bought something, they're about to go on an event, but also if you actually do have a brand new bike coming out that is a woman's bike, don't send that to the whole database, right? You need to just send it to females. I did recently get a email that talked about a Susan G. Cohen event in Squaw Valley, and it was actually for women only. And I'm like, well, not only am I not a woman, I don't live anywhere near Squaw Valley, and so that's the sort of email that you unsubscribe from because it's so completely unrelevant to you. And so I would just focus on relevance.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. We really want stuff in our inbox that means specifically like openness. This is for you. Alex, anything to add to this? I think Scott did a fantastic job answering it, but anything that you would add?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, he is the man to answer that question. That's why we do this together. But I also want to address something Mike had mentioned is that it hurts his soul, and I think the reason why it hurts his soul is because in this case, somebody who unsubscribes is likely not somebody who's going to resubscribe, right? And it's kind of a contact lost. And when in doubt, I would say don't press it. Like wait to have something that's a little bit more relevant. And in particular, the second part of Mike's question is interesting. It's should it be engaging or should it be something that offers a discount? I personally would actually not build my strategy around discounts and around showing the value or a discounted value of my products. When I first got introduced to the concept of in-store loyalty, online loyalty, the first person I spoke to really kind of I want to say blew my mind. And he said, if you're going to give something away, it has to be free. Don't ever discount the own value, like the value of your own products, and people will respond to it in a far better way. They called this a no strings attached promotion, and it worked brilliantly for this shop. It was outside of the bike industry, mind you, but like to kind of rehash it in a bike industry format. Basically, they had done the equivalent of just giving away a free water bottle, which they had likely negotiated with a vendor to also promote that vendor, and just giving away like a free water bottle to the first 200 people that came into the shop. Now that's an email that'll capture, what, get a free water bottle. Now we know we get duped a lot by things these days, so we obviously want to be mindful of that. But people will respond to it as like, wait a minute, there's no strings attached. They'll come into the store, you give them the water bottle, you introduce yourself, you build that relation. They might still be a little bit like, why are you doing this? And it's simply because I think it's important to be hydrated. That's pure and simple. It's important to be hydrated. It's important for me to talk to you. And I mean, the result for this particular store was that most people left with something else, as they didn't want to appear like they were driving out to the store just to get a free water bottle. So they were able to actually sell. But I would say stray away from discounting. If you're going to be offering any sort of discounts in your emails, it's because you've maybe targeted a segment of your customers that are discount chasers, and that's okay. There are people that will always be comparing prices, and you know what? You may as well have them in your shop instead of another shop or buying online. But you have to be able to segment those folks and to be able to know which ones are the ones that are only coming in for discounts. Because worst case is you turn people off who maybe are getting too many of these emails and they're just promotional marketing emails. And B, you might actually be selling a product at a discounted rate to somebody who would have bought it full price once they were just introduced to it in a different way. So again, if you take a combination of what I mentioned and what Scott mentioned, it's take your time, don't don't batch and blast. I think that's don't batch and blast, and don't devalue your most valuable resource, which again are the products that you have in your store, as well as that customer data. They unsubscribe, it's kind of game over.
So such great questions and such great advice. I'd like to just rewind a little bit. Say I'm a retailer. I've just gotten my point of sale system. I'm not really smart with computers. It's not my thing, but I know I need to get into this data-driven marketing platform. Alex, walk me through like how my point of sale system would communicate. Is there a lot of work that I'll need to do as the retailer, or is it pretty easy to get started and get it all connected?
It is. I mean, it is definitely easy to do. And the important thing is when you work with digital platforms like Lightspeed, like Ascent, and there are many others out there that can do a variety of things, scheduling, all sorts of things that can help you interact with your customers. The one rule, and this is a rule that we lived by at Rebicycle, is we do not make business, we don't take a step forward by creating a new job. We were a small, lean team. We couldn't afford to create to just get somebody else to do email marketing for us, or we couldn't afford somebody to book appointments for us. But what we could do is leverage systems like Ascent 360 or like a booking platform to interact with our customers for us. And it's no different with pretty much any digital platform. There's something known as APIs, which are basically how systems can talk together. And when they do the work for you. So it's like having, as soon as you connect these two systems, it's almost like having a free worker in your shop that's leveraging this information. So it's, Scott, I think I'd be overselling it by saying it's as simple as clicking a button, but I mean, it's close. It's really close. You might have to type in your credentials and then you're kind of off to the races and the data starts to flow into Ascent. And then you go onto the Ascent platform and start looking at what you can do. So it's, I mean, Tom, you're actively, engaged in that right now. Maybe I can flip that over to you. How easy was it?
Yeah, I mean, it was relatively easy, right? So we've tried out a lot of different software programs in the past and all sorts of fun stuff that we're doing. And Ascent 360 is, I mean, it certainly has more potential, so it's a bit more complicated, but the great part is you have the support, right? So that's what made it easy. So every company, when you sign up with them, they're going to say it's seamless, it's easy. And then when you sign up, you find out if it really is. And typically you go, okay, it's reasonable, right? With Ascent 360, the thing that I found great was the support, right? It was really easy to work with, the people I had to work with, right? They said, okay, this is what we're doing. This is how it's going to go down. We followed a schedule. And it was kind of cool. We'd have a meeting and they'd say, okay, what's going on in this part of your shop? Like, what do you want to do? And then the engineers would set it up and they, okay, it's all set. And we were on board, I think it was about a month. Yeah, it was a 30-day onboarding. And then everything was up and running. And also Ascent 360, we didn't take advantage of all the services, but I will say they do have services, right? Like you could take advantage of having them create the emails for you to get started. So overall, it was pretty easy to do. I would say to retailers, just make sure you do understand what is involved. Like you are going to have to spend some time. Someone is going to have to learn the platform, learn how it works, and just spend that time, making sure, okay, someone knows how this works and how to leverage it as best possible. But yeah, it was good. It was a good experience.
Tom's all smiles over there. He's like,
yeah.
And it sounds like the support that Ascent 360 provides along the way is pretty solid. So Scott, fantastic work by your team.
One thing I'd probably mention is, if you go back 7-8 years, some of the stuff we're talking about was kind of rocket science, right? Big companies were doing it and spending a lot of money doing it, but so much has changed from the technology front, right? With cloud computing, all these systems just interact with each other. And things have just gotten very straightforward, and that's actually a really big win for the small retailer, right? So 7 years ago, how do you compete with Amazon? It's like, I have absolutely no idea, right? They are so big, so powerful. They're from every aspect of the business. They're shipping things. They're doing all these things that look so hard. And what I'd suggest today is with all these modern platforms, and even ones that have absolutely no relationship to my own business, right? All these, shipping and labeling platforms, it really does bring the retailer back to the table and enables them to compete with the big guys. And I actually think that's what we saw over COVID. Thousands and thousands of small e-comm companies just absolutely killing it because they can finally compete because the tech is finally there.
I'm like feeling so good about this conversation. You know, we're
Yeah.
here to help retailers succeed, and we have so many new customers, and they are finding their local bike shops from so many different sources these days. There's local searches. They're looking for product suppliers, brand sites. We're getting customers coming to our websites, maybe filling out our, you know, email opt-in form. But how do we take these prospects and turn them into customers? That's where I want to take this conversation now. Scott, I'm going to throw, you just spoke, but I'm going to throw it back over to you.
Sure. So the way we think about a prospect is that is someone who, you know, who has not made a purchase. And, you know, the way that tends to happen is that they raise their hand somehow, right? They go to your website, they fill out something that says, you know, sign up for email or something like that. Why are they doing that? Well, they're effectively raising their hand, right? They're telling you, I'm in market. And they may be doing it because they're hoping you're going to send them a coupon. They may be doing it because they're hoping that you're going to send them some information, or they're trying to learn. And what we know from the data is that, and this is kind of across industries, but you've got about 18 to 21 days to close that person, right? They're in market. They know they want something. And what I would, you know, highly suggest is, you know, give them what they're looking for. And that's probably information on you know, bikes, on pricing, on, you know, fit, you know, what sort of bike is good for them, right? As people, you know, I've talked to a lot of people who started looking at bikes, you know, at the beginning of COVID, and I think people were a little bit shocked, right? They're like, I thought bikes cost like $600, right? And they don't anymore, most of them, anyways. And you know, you got to inform them, you know, what all that looks like. And it's also important to say that you've got so much data, right? You can see if they're opening or clicking on your emails, and that means they're engaging. You can see if they're clicking around your website, and if they, you know, click on, you know, your heading called mountain bikes or cyclocross bikes, then you know something about that. And as long as you use that data, it gives you so much data to then say they are a prospect. I can communicate with them about things that are important, and I can turn them into a customer and build that, you know, the start of that lifelong relationship.
Yeah, there's so much to this conversation, right? Turning these prospects, these leads into customers. Alex, anything else to add to that?
Communicate. That's it. Not everything has to be a sales pitch. Everything has to be part of relationship building, you know? But yeah, that's really kind of just to distill down my thoughts on that is just don't treat everyone like they're just there to buy something. I mean, they are. We all know it's the unspoken reason why they're signing up for a newsletter, but use it as an opportunity to build a relationship. And they themselves may not be the ones to come in and purchase from you, but they may speak of this to somebody else who may be in the market, who, you know, may be less off put by the fact that bikes don't cost $600 anymore, and that you know, if they be asked like, hey, where could I get a nice bike, say, well, I had this great interaction with Tom, and I like the stuff they send me, and maybe you should go check out Belmont Wheelworks, and they might be able to help you out there. Those are things that are kind of invisible to us. I mean, it's unless you get like some referral you know, leads there, but you wouldn't be able to get that if you didn't just set up a good communication plan and didn't do it with the intent of building a long-term relationship and not just a very short-term turnaround for a sale.
Yeah, we definitely need to look long-term. Tom, are you doing this at Belmont Wheelworks? Are you, you know, working with taking these leads and turning them into a customer?
Not yet. We're not fully up and running in that regard, but it is something we're working on. You know, that's kind of the next step for us. So we'll see when we get there.
It's good to have a strategy, and we'll have to maybe circle back and do another conversation when we're there. But I would, you know, Scott, okay, we've reached out, we've responded to these customers, these future riders who have shared with us their email. At what point can we tell, okay, they're engaged, they're going to buy from us, they're going to maybe come into the store or do a purchase online? Yeah,
so I think it probably is the data that helps you know those things. You know, without any of that data, you really know nothing, right? You're just kind of flying blind. You know that you've taken some action, but you don't have any idea what the response is. I think, you know, having some sense of what the response is really, really helpful. And it's, you know, you probably think about this similar to a funnel. And that is, you know, on the outside, there's this, you know, the kind of unknown individuals that start becoming, you know, kind of known prospects. Some of those known prospects are, you know, if you treat them the right way, they're going to become, you know, they're going to move from you know, prospects into, you know, that kind of consideration phase, right, where they're saying, okay, I actually do think that I want a bike, and I want to, you know, get it from Belmont Wheelworks, and you know, then they'll get into the store and finish up. And you know, what you want to kind of finish is at the bottom of that funnel. It's not just a consumer, right? It's an advocate. It's someone who's loyal. We actually have a guy in our office who literally just endlessly talks about his bikes. He's very specific to a specific brand. You know, he's got many of them, and you know, he's an advocate. And so if you know, Tom, with the way you were describing it earlier, right? If you turned that individual into an advocate, hey, they tuned up my bike, it still didn't work, and they fixed it, and that's absolutely fantastic. Then you know, you probably have a customer for a long time, but he's probably telling people also.
Definitely about building trust, definitely about being engaging, and looking definitely long-term, like we spoke about. Alex, anything else about, you know, when we know these leads are going to be customers and we've got them engaged?
Yeah. Sometimes we also want to, you know, look at strategies outside of emails. You know, there are other methods that are obviously here. We're here to talk about ways to be able to segment certain specific types of customers and send them the appropriate thing. But I've also just seen shops have a huge amount of success just pulling lists of customers and their purchase history, and then setting a bit of time to have, you know, someone like the shop manager just reach out, just give them a phone call if they have the number, and just ask them how things are. You know, if you've spent over, you know, it's very easy nowadays sometimes to spend over $10,000 right at a bike shop. It's almost the price of a small compact car, you know. But you want to be able to make sure that that's not just a one-time thing. So you can get a lot of value by just simply looking at, like, when's the last time the people who've spent more than a certain threshold, when's the last time they came into the shop? And if it's been more than a certain amount of time, just give them a call, just see if they're doing okay. You might be surprised by what they open up to you, and how you might be able to help solve a problem for them that, you know, wouldn't have been transparent or clear through an email exchange. So don't shy away from also just traditional methods of just, you know, talking to people and talking to the people in your community. You're, as a bike shop, you're a pillar of the community, whether you choose to be or not. Like, you are a pillar of the community. Cycling is a mode of transportation. It's a way of life for some. But in both cases, it's essential, and the past 15 months have shown us just how essential bike shops are. So don't be afraid to get in touch with people and to just have that conversation with them.
Oh my gosh, I'm smiling deep inside, because the bicycle shop is truly the heart and soul of the community. And, you know, I was sharing with someone earlier, the People's Choice voting for retailers of excellence. The consumers are leaving feedback that is just speaking to that, Alex, how the bike shop is the heart of the community, how these shop owners have changed their life. They go out of their way. I can't wait to share this feedback. We did have another live question I'd like to ask that from Peter. And I'll ask Scott. He asked for some thoughts on marketing via text rather than email. Any information you could share?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the state of the art is that text messaging is remarkably good for anything that is operationally focused, right? You know, your bike is now being serviced. You know, your bike is now finished service. Please come pick it up. All those sorts of things. But then you start saying, well, there's marketing that bends on the edges of things that are operational, right? So you know, the ride starts tomorrow at 9 a.m. You know, meet at the Apex Trailhead. That starts being more marketing and a little bit less operational, and those work very, very well. Just straight up sending a batch to, you know, 10,000 text messages to say something like, you know, 10% off XYZ. That really doesn't work. And you will have a very high unsubscribe rate. For whatever reason, people see text messaging as a little bit more central to their daily life, right? I mean, you have literally almost 100% open rate, right? Everyone reads all of their text messages. So we haven't seen success there. But I'll give you some other examples. We work with some ski resorts that they are sending things like, hey, reservations are still available at XYZ restaurant, or we still have rooms, feel free to stay the night for, $129. And those feel a little bit operational because they're effectively saying, hey, there's still inventory left. So I would just consider that sort of marketing and not just straight up, something that feels a little more traditional. It really won't work well.
So it comes back down to, I think, being really personalized. I am thinking about the text messages that I get. Some of those I don't even open. I just delete them because I can tell that they're too long and not really for me. I am loving this conversation. I'm really excited about the leaps and bounds that retailers could take if they really dive into this and invest in this. And we're saying we don't need to invest another person. It's not hard to get started, but I just want to unwind this a little bit. It's a sticking point. How do we do something new? How do we get started? So in very simple terms, Tom, tell me about how you got started at Wheelworks. What was the experience like? Was it tough, or anything you could lend to retailers who are thinking about this but not quite ready?
Yeah, so we did start in the winter, which for us in the Northeast was obviously a time to start. We would not start right now. So yeah, we planned it out. We realized, okay, we're going to do it. It is a 30-day onboarding. So we said, okay, this is when we're going to do it. And we just did it and spent the time. So I don't know, it kind of answers it, right? You just got to kind of commit to it at the right time for whatever the business is doing or whatever the person, someone does have to obviously take it on. So, whatever vacations you have, you just got to plan it and give it those 30 days and just go for it. And then it's kind of up and running, at least with what we did. We started with 4 what they call email plays, right? So we got those up and running and said, okay, we got the basics down. And then we're now, as we have time, building more emails in the summer, and as we have more time, we'll just build in more and more emails. But yeah, that was kind of that's the approach we took, was just start with the basics, go from there. And yeah, it's been great,
I am, say hello to Clint. I'm a huge fan of Belmont Wheelworks. You're located, I've visited the shop many times, and I know that that Clint and the team do not go into anything easily. It takes, definitely analyze it, looks at it closely. So I love that you shared with us that you started in the winter. The timing was right. Scott, I got you while you're taking a sip. Sorry, Scott. Any other advice for retailers who are just maybe, not quite sure, or it's just a sticking point getting started?
No, I think if you talk to people retailers who've been at this for a while, and a good example is out on the West Coast, Mike's Bikes has been doing this kind of relationship marketing for quite a while, and they've got a really sophisticated program now, right? They probably have 25, 30 different types of automations and different segments, right? They've got their kind of hero segments and all, and there's I think the NBA and NBDA did some sort of case study on that, and that's really interesting stuff. But I think the secret is that takes a couple of years to get there, so just start, right? I like to say crawl, walk, run, and just get started. Say, hey, these are 3 things that we want to accomplish in the next quarter, and once that quarter's done, say there's 3 other things that we want to execute on, right? So as Tom said, he's done his kind of customer stuff. Maybe he's going to move to some prospect things to say, a prospect stream or a welcome stream or something like that. And after that, then you do the same thing again. And I think it's a little bit like, how do you eat an elephant? And it's one bite at a time.
Yeah.
And one thing to just add to that too, one thing we did do to frame it is we ignored dollar amount when picking our groups, and we went with volume. So, because obviously if we focus on dollar amount, you'd end up with, emails going towards customers who are buying high-end road bikes. So what we did is we went for volume, which we ended up with hybrids, kids bikes, and 2 other segments. And the reason also why we did that is we know that the customers, if someone's coming in and buying a $6,000, $8,000, $10,000 road bike, they're going to get a certain level of service because those sales are a bit more involved. They involve accessories, the fitting. They're going to be working with a certain salesperson. So while we have plans to create emails for that customer, we weren't as concerned about that customer off the bat because we know they're getting a tailored experience with that purchase. So that, I guess, just a small tip. We focused on volume, not revenue, to hit all those people who come in. They maybe take an hour to buy their hybrid bike, and then they could be gone for a while. Maybe they came from an hour away. So we wanted to be able to interact with them and reach that customer again and make sure they're getting those emails and make sure they're not missing out on information that we want them to know about.
This is such a fantastic time to be sending these emails. We have all these new cyclists who are finding our industry who maybe have no idea what to expect as far as what a bicycle needs for maintenance, for upkeep, even the items that they need to purchase along with their bicycle. So you're not doing them a disservice by sending these emails. You're actually doing such an incredible service by keeping them educated, staying in regular contact with them. So this is something that we need to all be doing because it's going to keep these cyclists engaged, keep our industry booming. And I'm thinking, Scott, you brought up Mike's Bike, such a fabulous success story they had. I'd call that definitely a home run. Alex, do you have any retailers that stick out to you that you would call home runs or any success stories you could share?
Yes, definitely. Having worked with Mike's Bikes as well, I know their story. I know how they got started, and like Scott said, crawl, walk, and then run. I guess my tip, and I'm going to do a small plug here for the shop that I opened, Rebicycle, and it's only because it makes sense within the context of this. Is look at your channels. Like, look at the channels that you currently have. If your only channel is basically people that are walking in and hoping that you're going to collect their information, that may not be the channel you want to look at investing in and saying, hey, this is where we're going to collect all of our emails. At the beginning of our conversation, Scott mentioned Amazon, which captures 100% of their customer data. I would argue that Tom also captures 100% of the customer data of people who purchase on eComm. And it's the same for my shop. We're a by appointment only shop. So of course, if you want to get there, get your reminder for your appointment, you need to leave me information that is valid, one that I know that is actually reaching you. So look at your channels, and not everybody can be a by appointment shop. Not everybody has an active e-commerce store, but analyze those ones and see if there's a room for you to complement basically the in-store activities and continue to collect that data. And that data is perfect. Like, it's not perfect, but it's like if they responded to the text message about their appointment, it's going to them. It's not a fake number. And again, if they got the confirmation email for their order, well, then that email is good. So those are channels that you can help as well, outside of just strategizing with your team, because I've heard this feedback a million times. Oh, the people in my shop are, very conscious of the personal information they leave. I don't know how I'm going to get them to do that. Well, you frame it differently, right? And you look at channels. So that's my 2 cents on that topic.
Thanks, Alex. And Scott, I see you nodding. Anything you could add to that? Any other home runs that you'd share?
Yeah, I think one that's interesting, it's actually a outdoor specialty retailer, and they and I guess the message is like, do it your way, right? Your shop is special in the way that your shop is special, and these guys specifically, they decided to do customer relationship building through events, and so they started holding events. Let's just call it stand-up paddle event. They would reach out to people. They would get 60, 80 people involved in some sort of an event, maybe some races. They over time have built to a couple hundred, and they would talk to them about that specific event and all the things around it. The sport, on some level, they know so much, right? And then what they can see actually is they know who registers for the event. They know who comes to the event. And then they know who's actually buying stand-up paddleboards after that event. And it's turned out to be a remarkably high ROI project. They're doing really, really well. And not only that, they've just built these kind of fanatics who love the shop because they love the sports that they've gotten into. And they also have, at these events, they've got experts. people who, like one they did somewhat recently was like how to pack for a backcountry trip, and not just like what to pack, like how, right? What do you, how do you waterproof it? How do you actually fill the bag? What's at the bottom and what's at the top, and all those sorts of things. And then you can just simply see all these people are buying stuff. And the only reason I want to raise that topic is, when they were talking about that strategy, I was just unsure. I know this business really, really well. And we've got a team of strategists who know this business really well, but I didn't quite understand the strategy, and they did it their way, and it's worked absolutely fantastically.
Now I've got goosebumps because it's so true. Like we each started our retail store. We went into this with a passion. We thought we could do it uniquely different, or we thought we had a way that would really just capture and retain customers and get people's attention. Find that, tap into that again, and use data. It's so important. I can't thank Tom, Scott, Alex enough for coming on, for sharing. This talk today was pretty structured, but there's so much more to dive into. And I'm sure that you could, if you're listening and you want to learn more about Lightspeed or Ascent 360, or even, call over to Belmont Wheelworks. Sorry, Tom, we're going to get you some calls, but any other questions, feel free to reach out. But we have a little bit more time. Is anyone who's listening and joined us today have any specific questions? I'm happy to, take those now. You could type them into the Q&A, and we'll take a few more minutes if anyone has any questions. Okay, so we do have a question here. What are some ways retailers can collect emails in store? Alex, do you have any tips for that?
Yeah, I'll jump on that one. I feel like I keep repeating myself, but it's for a good reason that I'm repeating myself. It's just frame it, contextualize it, explain, be transparent, and hopefully the reasons you're collecting that email is to communicate and just to make sure that you're providing a service beyond this very interaction. And that's just how we should always be framing it. And, you might have to subdivide the framing as well. And, you train the staff in store, but, a downhill mountain biker who, let's just say you have a shop that's by a downhill mountain and by a city center, but, the reason why you're collecting the phone number or the email for somebody who's, a hardcore downhill cyclist is very different than someone who's an urban cruiser. And, you may not get the same response with the same strategy. So just frame it, make it light. And again, don't try to push them towards it. I've been pushed towards leaving information. No, we absolutely need this. And I mean, you could imagine that I obviously didn't leave the right information, and just to be able to get out of that shop and possibly, never really come back to it. So just frame it, train your staff, frame it around why you're doing it, and be transparent, and you'll see the results will speak for themselves. People do want to be marketed to if it's relevant, and people definitely want to be communicated with after purchase, especially.
Yeah, and I would add to that, make sure that your staff members who are taking the information, right in front of the customer, they're typing it into the computer, that they're comfortable. And how can we be comfortable when we do this? I remember when I first was 20 years old, my hands would shake. I would get nervous, but if I would be like, oh, hold on, I don't want to get this wrong, and like kind of joke a little bit with the customer, it would make the conversation, the moment simple and feel better. And I would be sure to get the correct information, the correct email into the computer. So just make sure your staff feels comfortable asking as well. Some more questions, Scott. I'm going to throw this one to you. The best methods for new outreach outside of your current social media network for retail sales.
Yeah, so there are pretty straightforward strategies that let's just touch on really quickly. So when we think about your current social media network, right? This is probably people who are following your store on Facebook or Twitter or whatever other network we're talking about. That is a pretty limited group. And not only that, those networks effectively demote those posts, right? They're not paid posts, and therefore when you do post, the people who actually see those is just going down and down and down. And Facebook's honestly been criticized because they have created a world in which the people who are following you don't really see your stuff anymore because everything else higher is effectively paid. So the core strategy is to say, well, take the people that you know, right? Let's just say you've got 1,000 people that you can actually load those people into Facebook, and it will match those people specifically, right? It'll say, this is Tom Cohen, and he is a Facebook user, and he'll be in that list. They'll only match about 70-75% of whatever list you've got, but that's a pretty typical number. And now you can actually create promoted posts to those individuals. It's a bit like sending email to them. It just, they show up on their wall, or if it's an ad on the side, you're ultimately paying for it. But the costs of those sort of ads can actually be pretty low, and you're actually talking to people who know you. But then the next thing is, well, you can actually take that group of 1,000 people and tell Facebook or tell Instagram, create a lookalike audience, and they're going to take that group and all the things that we know about them and say, let's create an audience of, let's call it 20,000 people who look just like the 1,000 people, right? And you've got to kind of filter it. You say they can't live all that far from where the store is, and there's some other criteria. And that lookalike audience is just another great way of approaching people who are a little bit, outside of your current network.
I had no idea about all the capabilities, and this is why we have experts. So I appreciate you sharing that. And I'm sure, if anyone has more specific questions on that, you could send an email to me, Heather at NBDA, and I can reach out to Scott or send a message directly to Scott's team for sure. I'm going to answer or ask one more question that we have here, and then we'll pretty much wrap it up for today. And I'll ask this to Alex. Alex, the question comes in, do you have any suggestions for leveraging your existing customer loyalty to generate prospects?
Right. So if I understand the question correctly, I have a list of customers that I'm engaging with, but I want to use that customer base to generate new prospects. So to basically leverage it to expand my outreach to new customers. I'm probably going to defer this one to Scott because I'm just going to repeat myself and say communicate, build a relationship, and it'll do itself. Scott might have, a strategy or something in mind that could help with that. So I'll let the expert here actually take that question.
Yeah, there's really a lot there, and it relates a lot to the lookalike audiences I talked about on Facebook, right? You can take them and create lookalike audiences. You can do that through a lot of channels, not just Facebook. Google will let you do the same thing throughout their ad network. So if you do videos, as an example, you can create lookalikes for YouTube. You can also do that same exact thing through direct mail. So imagine if you have whatever, let's say 1,000 people, you take that 1,000 people. There's a bunch of companies, and Axiom's a big one that does this. They take 300 or 400 variables about those consumers, and they say, this is what your customer base looks like. This is their age and income and demographics, where they live, and all these other things. And then we're going to create a model, and we're going to give you another 10,000 people that live within 15 miles of the center of this zip code. And now you can send them direct mail if you want to, or send them a postcard, or however the best way of getting a hold of them are. So I guess what I'm saying is you can do that via email. You can do that, and email honestly doesn't work that well, right? Prospecting email, I wouldn't recommend it. But the direct mail works great via Google, via Instagram, via Facebook. All of that actually works very well, and it is it's certainly worthy of doing. The only thing that I would caution here is, what we actually know is that you're 7 times as likely to sell to someone you know as to a prospect, to someone you don't know. And I guess what I would suggest is go maximize your customer base, and make sure that you know them and they know you. And once you've kind of tapped that out, then I would go start doing the prospecting stuff.
These are fantastic questions. I'm very thankful for the retailers who listened and shared today with us this past hour or so. Scott and the Ascent 360 team will be joining us at the Big Gear Show in August, and he'll be doing a presentation there. So, if you're headed to the show, please look to find us and ask any other questions. There will be a recording. Rochelle, this is available to our members. Will it be later today?
Yes, it'll be on our website under the super webinars series. It'll be the recording there for everyone to see.
Thanks, Rochelle. Yeah, so if you want to go back and take another listen, catch anything that maybe you didn't hear the first time around, share it with friends of yours who maybe didn't have a chance to listen, who would benefit from the conversation as well. Tom, thank you for coming on. I wish Wheelworks lots of success as you continue forward. We'll have to do a catch up to see how things are going here soon. And Alex and Scott, thank you so much for joining today.
Thank you as well. That was great.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Our pleasure. This is amazing. Thank you.
All right, see everyone soon. Thank
Bye now.
you.